Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Hey, season 5 is on fire. And like I told you, we're going to be having exciting conversations with great guests. And we're just talking about what are the next steps. You know, we're in such a period of transition, although we've come through a great transition, vaccines out, a new election, and people just tend to feel like everything is new. But we're asking the question, but now what? How do we keep our foot on the accelerator? And how do we keep putting pressure on the systems to not go back and to continue changing? Today, we're talking about the ominous topic of pardoning. A gubernatorial pardon, a pardon by Wisconsin's Governor Tony Evers. And so today, my guest is the pardoned Anthony Cooper Sr. and our state public defender, Kelli Thompson. Anthony Cooper is a vice president at Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development. I hired this young man 8 years ago. He's been with me since 2013. He's the vice president of strategic relationships and reentry services. We also have Kelli Thompson, who is our state's public defender and has been in that role since 2011. She studied law at Marquette's Law School and has just been a real advocate and a strong partner for criminal justice reform in this community. She and Anthony and I work on one of Justified Anger's initiatives. Justified Anger is an initiative of Nehemiah that's focusing on criminal justice reform. We call it the Criminal Justice Table. And so we meet with a number of people from Department of Corrections to law enforcement to nonprofit leaders to public defenders, to formerly incarcerated individuals to look at what we can do to work together to make this system work better for our folks. Kelli, Anthony, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you
all
so
right.
much, Dr. G. And it's wonderful to be with you and to be with Anthony on an exciting program, but also just to talk about some really, I think, as you said, thought-provoking and hopefully some real reformative work that we can do in the criminal justice system.
Definitely. Anthony, the first thing I want to say to you, and of course I see you, we go to church together, we work together. Man, congratulations on the part. Congratulations. And Anthony, you're usually energetic, so don't sound so subdued. Now, this isn't.
I was pulling it back just a little bit. I said,
People will write me and say, don't have him back on. So come on now, don't be sitting there,
I just thought I'd give you the laid back voice and just,
No, dude, come on now. We need to self-correct.
No.
We'll lay back. We'll do that on the road.
Right. No, but
we're gonna jump right in. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
yeah, but no, I just wanted to. I mean, and this is really goes off. I take my hat off to you in a lot of different ways. Not only just being my pastor, also my boss, but I do want to just say I want to thank you as well. Just being able to one, allow me to be me, right? In the work that what I do throughout the community. I think that has truly been a blessing. So before we just jump into things, that's why I was trying to make sure I didn't cut you off, but I just want to make sure I say that. And then also, I believe you may know this. I believe you, well, man, I forgot what now. Also, I serve on the Public Defender Board also with Kelli as well. And that was, and it's been a pure blessing and a pleasure to know so many of the great people that are doing great work throughout the state.
Which means that Anthony is technically my boss. So I will say only wonderful things throughout the entire podcast about him, which is easy to do. It's very, very easy to do. But yes, he is my boss.
Wow. So this is so interesting. So you've only been partnered a little bit. We're going to get into that for just a little while, Coop.
Mm-hmm.
But you're on the board of the State Public Defender. Like what's it called, Kelli? The State Public Defender Board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the way it works in Wisconsin is we're an independent executive branch agency. So Governor Evers appoints board members, 9 board members throughout the state of Wisconsin. The Senate confirms them. And then technically they're kind of that buffer in between the rest of government and the public defender's office. So I'm not a cabinet member. I'm hired and fired by the board.
Wow, this is wild. And so Coop, you were on this board before you were pardoned. And so Anthony, let's go back. I got so much to ask you, man. So we'll try to keep some of the answers short. I got so much more to talk. Sometimes we think, okay, does he only have 2 questions? Let me just talk to fill this time. I got so many questions for you. Coop, what year was it? What year was it that we met?
Oh, wow. That had to have been 2003. Yes.
Oh my gosh. We go back almost 20 years. All right. So I was visiting some friends and I saw you and I thought you were hitting on a young lady that was in our program. She used to be, she grew up in any of my programs. My sister used to mentor her. And so I jokingly said this, I'm a community pastor, Black Like Me listeners. So I saw this guy who looks, kind of, let's just say sophisticated. He just looks a little experienced. And so I said, hey, Tanika, hey brother, I know this young lady, like, why are you over her house? Because I got a knife in my car and I'll do something with it. Which is not the most pastoral moment, but Coop, I said something like that to you, right?
No. You should, to be exact, because I remember that. I remember that day like it was yesterday. The fact that he said he would cut me, get out of the van and cut me. And so, right. So mind you, I mean, I doing some things in my life that were great, but also just kind of just in a different space in my life at the same time. And so I'm like, my friend, but he says his friend, but my friend's mother was outside also, and me and her brother went to school together, so we're like a second family to me. And so I look at Miss Lopez, and I look, and so she's laughing. So I'm like, okay, I wasn't for sure if this guy was serious and I had to pull him out of the van, or like we were going to get.
You were trying to assess.
I'm like, I don't know why, but I would have had to protect myself.
You like Miss Sophia in Color Purple. Every day I gotta fight for my corner. Like I'm just every day I gotta fight. And so Coop, to this day, man, like you're one of my vice presidents. And our first conversation was about cutting, like stabbing you. And so you looked at them and they were laughing. So you realized I wasn't trying to call you out or anything.
Right.
And then I invited you to church.
Yep.
And I think you hadn't fully shaken the old life. I mean, you're pardoned now, so we can talk about it. I don't think you had fully shaken some of all the old stuff. And I invited you and you said, I can't come this week, but I can come the week after. Mm-hmm. And you kept your word. You did not come that following Sunday, but you came 2 weeks later and you've been hanging out ever since. And there was something about you that I like, Coop, because I mess with people like that when I like them. And so although I laugh and thinking like you were saying something inappropriate to her, Miss Lopez was out there and she would cut you. Miss Lopez ain't gonna let anybody talk crazy to her.
That's a whole nother show.
I knew you were fine because Miss Lopez wasn't look scared, wasn't looking around and didn't have one of her hands on her hips and her head moving. But the thing was, Coop, there was still some stuff. You were out. How long had you been out at that point?
At that point, I say out, I mean, at that point, it had to be close to about 2 years. And so, I was still trying to, I mean, definitely as a manage stuff for my kids and making sure they're straight, but then also, still trying to climb the ladder, right? Climb the ladder, trying to have a job that can take care of me and my family. And so, but in the mix of that, it was times that where, I knew that I was falling short, right? I knew that at some point, I need to get.
What does that mean? Falling short, like not going to see.
Falling short, meaning that the simple fact is like, man, something has to give. I do not want to be out here continuing to struggle, and that was, it's like it was the thoughts in my mind, like, all right, do I do this? Do I go back to what I know? Right. So do I go back to what I know, or do I, just keep trying to work from warehouse to warehouse to try to make something else happen? Right.
Right. And so you take care of your family and stuff.
Right. So in the mix of that, also I think when I finally learned who, or I always call him G, who I finally learned who G is, the fact that I felt like that happened for a bigger reason. Because I know how close I was to getting off into really doing something different, right? And that, and who knows what that will lead me.
no, this is good. No, cool, because I know you well. So sometimes we talk coded. So doing something good, doing something different, being
Right. I mean, it could have been easily. I could have got back out there selling drugs. I could have got you know what I mean. That's what that. Yeah, that's what that means. Right. So, you know, even though that's not the path of what I wanted for myself, because I know that's what would have ended up happening, either dead, locked up again, you know, all these other different things that could have happened.
So at that time, were you falling back into old habits? Were you? And if you don't like answering this, we can always delete this out. But
no, I mean the thing is, it could have it could have happened. It could have happened, right? You know, could have definitely happened. Because of just a lot of different events that were happening, like transitioning jobs, the whole nine, and not, you know, being back behind in rent. You know, just
so you're
not
in
being
a
able
state.
to support the way I was used to being able to support. That's one of the things that I talk about, you know, in our Man Up group, and also, and when I go and talk to, when I go into prisons, or if I go in federal or state, or even in our county jail, and I tell them, I said, the fact that, you know, selling drugs and things of that nature, that's a trigger for some, right? The fact that for some people, it's a thing of like, hey, I know how to make it happen. I know how to, let me go ahead and get back to doing what I know. The results of it may be dangerous in the mix of it, but the possibility of it is, hey, for right now, this can fulfill that need.
Gotcha.
So
Anthony, what you get in that group is, and Man Up is a group that we run in Nehemiah that gives support to men coming out of prison. So it's a before COVID shut things down, it was a bi-weekly meeting. So we met on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's a group I actually started back in school, and Anthony was a participant in the group. Now he's a vice president in our organization, supervising the man that runs the group, who was also in the group when I used to run it. And Anthony, one of the things I think is really important is you're showing the human side of illegal activity. Again, you all, we're sitting here with the state's public defender. I'm a pastor. We're not trying to condone wrongdoing, but we're also believing in humanizing individuals who do wrong, because they're not just wrongdoers, but they're people who, for some reasons, have done wrong. You know, and so, Anthony, one of the things that struck me is that when you were in illegal activities, when you were doing this, the things that led you to prison, you told me that you weren't using it, never used. You wanted to make sure that you were taking care of responsibilities. You had children, you had a mom you wanted to take care of. And I remember that was an aha moment for me, because I always assumed that if someone was involved in drug trafficking, they were using, you just picture they're selling it to kids, and they're selling it to pregnant women. And when you said you weren't using and you were helping folks, it reminded me of Tupac's song, Dear Mama, because I use that in my book, Hip Hop Profits, where he talked about how it makes him feel good to put, rent money in her mailbox or something to that effect. And so I think people need to understand that we are not justifying wrongdoing, but we are also talking about men and women who are categorically, systematically shut out of mainstream educational opportunities, lack of teachers who understand them, the lack of folks who understand people who may learn differently, the lack of motivation, and people just outright telling you never amount to anything, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. And so the piece that I love about your story, Coop, and in just a minute, we're gonna start talking about the pardon process, and we're gonna bring our state public defender into the conversation more. But the thing that you did for me is to understand there's a story here. And if we only call people drug dealers and never realize that that's someone's son, someone's dad, someone's brother, uncle, and find out their story, then we don't understand the road to recovery. And if you're just a drug dealer and not a person who fell into hard times and made the wrong choice to do the wrong things in the community, then we don't think we could ever fix you. So something down the road, like, and I say that facetiously to say fix, if we don't think if that's doable, then we don't want pardon. We don't want people on parole. We want people locked up forever. Politicians push their agendas by talking about, we can't be soft on crime. And so people don't understand the individual. They will never think about how to maintain or restore your humanity, because certainly prison, you taught me this, takes that away. And so the story that I want to get on today is just about the humanizing process of this, and how you continue to remind people in your story, through what you say and through those that you serve, that there's a person behind that prison number.
Exactly.
There's a person behind those things. And that's something that makes me really proud to work with you on. So Kelli, let me ask you a question. I'm going to get into the actual pardon process. And you can be as political or apolitical as you like, Kelli. But when Governor Evers started pardoning, I think in 2019, I found some of the early records. Like I read something about him pardoning 18 people, and this was like the middle part of last year. It said that there was like a 10-year hiatus on the pardon board. So what happens that a pardon board goes away, Kelli?
Well, so I think what had happened in this case is it's a governor's choice, like any boards or commissions that they can put together or reconstitute or put members on. And I believe Governor Walker was pretty adamant about his statement that what happened in the courts should stay in the courts, and that he should not be providing this opportunity or having individuals, have a pardon board to then go back and decide if someone should be pardoned. So I think that was a decision he made, right almost from the beginning, because there was a fair amount of press around it. And I think some pretty, I would say, I think all of the stories are very wonderful to hear and very emotional and really are tied, but there were, highlighted in the national news. And it was just something that he never changed. So that was just from the beginning to the end of his term as governor, there were no pardons. He said, this is not something I'm going to do. Right. And that board was never, the pardon board didn't continue during his time. Then Governor Evers obviously pretty quickly put together his pardon board and decided it was something that he was going to bring back, as other governors had done previously. So I think it was a philosophy. That's the only way I can say it. I think that was his philosophy. I think the stories that we see now, especially Governor Evers, usually when they do kind of a press release or a highlight in the news, there's a little story about each person, and they're really wonderful stories. I mean, these are individuals who, as you have mentioned, made a mistake, did something that was illegal, sometimes 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And
60?
Yes, 60.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, these are people that oftentimes, and I know we're going to get into the pardon board process, but really Anthony is really the person to talk about just what this does. But so often you read, this is a person that would like to go hunting with their grandchildren. This is somebody who has wanted a certain job and just has not been able to do it. This is someone who wanted to cross, a border and felt that they shouldn't do it without a pardon. All of these aren't big necessarily, and then obviously the emotional part of that, just having this behind you, being able to say it's behind me, kind of a nod from whomever saying, you've done a really good job in your life and you deserve this, I think is, so they're important. I think they're extraordinarily important.
It's something just to add on to that. I want to make sure I say this, Kelli, is the fact that, but then also it's showing the fact that people can change, right? People can, can start somewhere. Cause we have all, I don't care, you may have not went to prison or jail or whatever, we have all fall short in one way or another, right? Have done something we have not supposed to have done, right? May not with the same type of legal consequences, but no one's perfect, right? And so in the mix of that, this also shows like, hey, look, it's possible for a person to be able to change their life around and do something different, right? It's possible for someone to, to learn from their experience, but why should that person also be condemned for the rest of their lives for this, right? So myself being, and when I, even with some of the guys who I've mentored and things of that nature, and I tell them like, look, when I first came home, I applied for over 450 jobs, right? 450. 450. So out of 450 jobs,
you didn't do on monster.com. These are the old days you filled out paper applications.
But I did the monster too. I did everything possible from work, jumping from one recruitment agency to the other recruitment agency, staffing agency. That's what I'm referring to. So Now it's kind of like, all right, so the job at who ended up hiring me, and I'm trying to raise 2 sons, and I also was Papa John's Pizza. Papa John's, and truth be told, I got into that job because a friend of mine ended up becoming a manager there that knew me from back in the days. They knew me. He was like, cool. He was like, man, I know this isn't what, I was like, brother, I'm trying not to go back to prison. I never want my sons to see me back in prison again. So if this is where I know this is going to be a start, I didn't feel like I was going to be the new CEO of Papa John's Pizza, right? But at the same time, I knew that was, right.
Papa John's, you are not going to be
right. That's a whole nother subject, right? But what I did know, I had to start somewhere to get somewhere. So whatever I did, so I took the same type of mentality that what many men and women, especially ones who have hustled to be able to get to get things, it is you knew you had to start somewhere to get somewhere and follow that path. So my path was I worked here, and when my next job was working in a warehouse, and the next job, kind of eventually I knew I needed to go back to school. But what I did, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. But the rejections that there was a company that actually we've talked to, and we actually talked about this. It's funny that I got a chance to talk to the current CEO of that agency about this, that where actually I applied for them a job. I met all the qualifications, blah, blah, blah. But the staffing agency that wanted to place me there said that they couldn't because of my background. That job alone, even though during that time that was making maybe like $13 an hour, but that alone would have, I probably would have stayed there as long as they would have had me, right? But it also just shows that where you also have to talk about purpose too, and then also be able to talk about the choice, because it could have been easy for me to go back and doing what I was doing that was negative, right? But as long as I kept going forward, and I'll say this and not trying to be preachy or anything of that nature, right? But I think that's something that for me, God, I think that we don't talk enough about, is that, being able to have, God gives you choice. So the choice was like when we go back in time, when he used Pastor G, Alex G, as the messenger to say, hey, look, why don't you, to fish for me and say, hey, out of a conversation, why don't you come to this church, blah, 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 right? But then also it was a choice in that. Either I could have blew it off and say, oh yeah, I'll be there. But then also I'm like, you know what, that came for a reason. There's something about that. And so I had to continue to go forward, which allowed greater things to happen. But a lot of men and women some of us don't feel like they have a choice. So there's also something because of all the doors that have been closed in their face. And that's something that's not talked about also as much as I think it should be.
Right. And Anthony, you and folks like Jerome have taught me so much about reentry and what it means to walk alongside people as they're getting their lives, back together. I was looking through some old photos last night, and I found pictures I took of that room in the Department of Corrections where they have furniture and clothing that people are making for, like, I don't know, 19 cents an hour, 57 cents an hour, less than $1, less than $2. And the sign that says, here's our mission, that we're developing people and to develop great skills so that when they get out of prison, they can get jobs, knowing that people from that department sometimes have talked companies out of hiring people. I've been sitting in a room where they said, do you know the whole story?
Right.
And they said when they go to prison, they can't be on computers, they can't do sales calls on Chili's because Chili's is a bar. Applebee's is a bar. And so to know that you overcome that, man, because you're driven by wanting to be a good father in your children's lives, it's just really powerful. So I just want people to know Anthony has a powerful story. Justified English created a new podcast where we're talking about people about their journeys reentering back into the community. We're going to put a link on this podcast for that, because I want people to continue to hear your voice and your story. So a pardon is a forgiveness of some serious offense. It's the remission of a penalty, but it is not necessarily an expungement of your record. So Kelli, I'll ask you this just as an attorney. Is that true? So just because Anthony has been pardoned, that does not mean that his record is expunged, and expunge just meant wiped out so that it can never be found again. So his offense is still on the books. Someone can look at it. Is that correct?
Right. It does not seal the public record.
And that's what expungement is. It's a sealing of it.
Well, and what can happen with, so what the pardon does is it provides, certain civil rights. It gives you back certain civil rights, certain privileges, and such as holding state office, possession of a firearm. Again, we were talking about hunting before, some professional licenses. So it does that for individuals, but again, it doesn't go away. And in Wisconsin, obviously it only applies to offenses in Wisconsin or convictions in Wisconsin. But so it is still there, but it certainly does restore a fair amount of privileges that individuals do lose because of a criminal conviction. And, Dr. G, what you were talking about before, and I know Anthony mentioned, is that's one of the toughest parts of our system is that you are done with your criminal conviction, or you're done with your time, whether you go to prison or not, you have this criminal conviction. It's the collateral consequences that follow that can be so difficult for individuals. I mean, you never really ever get rid of that burden, that really strong, tough burden of a criminal conviction. No matter what, and it's what Anthony talked about. People are just trying to get ahead. They're just trying to make the right choices. They're trying to be able to support themselves or their families, or get the job where they've applied for 450. And we tend to, intentionally or unintentionally, we set up barriers for individuals. These obstacles that sometimes are just, well, first of all, it's a life sentence for most, but it all. And it's hard I think it's really hard for people to fathom, as, people are like, well, why do people go back? Why do people commit another crime? Because so often we've set up so many barriers that people it's just, sometimes it's what Anthony said. If you're supporting your family, you're supporting your children, you're trying to support your mother. Sometimes you're going back to doing things that you can, it's a short-term thinking. Okay, if I just do this for a short period of time, it will give me an opportunity to make a long-term decision that's beneficial. And oftentimes people don't get that opportunity to make that long-term decision. So it's, those collateral consequences we talk about so often is really it's what I said, it's a life sentence for individuals. And we stop people from getting jobs. We stop people from living in certain areas. We stop people from being able to have certain housing. We stop people from having driver's license. We stop people for educational opportunities. I mean, it crosses the gamut. And then we say, but hey, you're out now. You should be successful.
Right.
So slap you on the back and move on. And so that's really such a struggle for people.
Yeah. And with no true assistance behind it. So even when I came home, I had an agent, I had all of those things, but no one said, oh, all right, let's talk about job searching. Right. So a lot of that stuff I had to navigate by myself. Right. There wasn't a big talk about reentry. Of course, now reentry is the buzzword that everyone is drawn to now. Right. But even before me, right. Think about all the many men and women who have came home back into society with nothing. You had no hope. Before us having organizations, Nehemiah and others, they felt as though they were hopeless. They had to figure things out. And if you don't have the proper things set up, and if you don't have a supportive family, you don't have, heck, you may not even have a roof over your head. Or if you do, it may be something that's very temporary. Those are all things that what people think about. Just you come from a situation that even if it is coming from prison, that when you're on lockdown, then you're out here to basically try to figure out things on your own. Right. And of course, things have changed over time and things of that nature. Some people are being dropped off at the homeless shelter. Some people are left just out there, those are things that, again, those are some of the things that I think is not processed. And those things are still happening today. Right. The exact same things are happening. I'm sorry.
And no, don't apologize. Part of what you're making me think about is something that our colleague Aaron Hicks always says. This is not a failed system. The system is designed to do this. And so, we have a lot of people that listen into Black Like Me because they want to understand how systems work. And we're not just conspiracy theorists. I mean, I have some conspiracies, that I believe in. But this show is really not about that. I'm talking about going to one of my favorite restaurants, Perkins. It's like the closest diner to me. But I had one of the servers there say, Pastor G, can I get your phone number? Because there are men who come here and just sit here all night because they get dropped off at 11 p.m. Now, if someone didn't tell me this, I wouldn't believe it. Kelly, I wouldn't. She said they get dropped off and they come here at 11 p.m. Now, whether they get dropped off at 11 p.m., somehow they have no place to go. So they come with their box of belongings and they sit at Perkins. They don't cause trouble. So they would call the police if they were loitering. So they might give them some food or coffee or something. But come on, what the heck? You drop somebody off that's been incarcerated for 10 years. They don't have a cell phone. And even if they did, the numbers have changed. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to figure this out and you get dropped off on a Tuesday with all your belongings in the world, all your earthly possessions in a little cardboard box. I just want people to know that really happens. And if I weren't involved in this, and Coop, I think you're with me. I think that when she asked for my number, you said, "Hey, G, let me take this." Yep. But we know that this happens. People get dropped off with no connections. And so that's why we have built our reentry programs. Anthony, this is hard. You said, did you put in 450 applications? But Anthony, I want you to brag on yourself. Roughly how many men and women have you placed in jobs since you've been at Nehemiah since 2013?
Oh, probably more. I would say more than 1,000 or so. When you think of this 8 years times. So yeah. But again, I think that.
And these names you can write down, people. They're not like eeny, meeny, miny. Like these are folks that we can document. These are this isn't just like I said, why don't you go apply at Radio Vac or why don't you go down to UW? A lot of this was coaching. A lot of this you negotiated it with the employers. Not you can do it with 1,000 companies, but because those things weren't there, but you knew having employment kept you from getting back to the street life.
Right.
Know, as a person has an address and a job, they are vulnerable. So we have housing units. It keeps growing. How many buildings do we have?
Well, currently we have 4. We have emergency housing. That's so we have the emergency housing, and we have 3 apartment buildings as well.
Right. So we're housing people. We're doing mentoring with folks. We're doing personal support and helping them with jobs. And if we don't do these things, we create a revolving door for our prison system. So our communities become poorer, the system becomes richer, and those thousands of men and women who are in our prisons are part of families and communities and churches and organizations. So it's not just that one person that goes missing, it's the networks that they belong to in a time where we need these folks in the community if they're no longer dangerous or a threat to the community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And Dr. G, and we have to make sure that we're not making them dangerous to the community. And I think that's where we start. Right.
Hi, this is Dan Gruppe from Monona, Wisconsin. I listen to Black Like Me because it brings alive for me what it means to be a Black person living in Wisconsin and living in the United States through people's stories and lived experiences. And this show has helped me to understand my role as a white person in either allowing racial disparities and injustices to be perpetuated or to take a more active role in dismantling these systems. And I'm a Patreon supporter because I feel like it's critical to amplify this message and help bring more people to the fight.
Now in its 5th season, the award-winning Black Like Me podcast has a reach throughout the U.S. and in over 100 countries around the world. It is the work of a dedicated team of people here in Madison, Wisconsin, dedicated to changing the conversation surrounding race. When you sign up to support Black Like Me as a patron, you support the work they are doing and help create better quality content and a better society. By going to patreon.com/BlackLikeMe and signing up at any of the levels offered, you are not only signing up to make a monthly donation, you are also joining a growing community of people interested in engaging the issue of race with a raw, unprecedented honesty. As a patron of the podcast, you have access to exclusive content like extended interviews, bonus rants, and video chats with Dr. G. You will also have a chance to join the conversation that other patrons are already having with Dr. G about race in America. To become a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/BlackLikeMe or see the link in our show notes. And for as little as $2, you can support these important conversations and the work that Dr. G is doing. Thank you in advance.
We know that just in someone that's charged with a crime and taken into a jail, if they are already in an unstable position, after 24, 48, 72 hours, we've made them completely unstable. Any of those, even tiny connections they've had to their community are gone. And we've made our community, and then we let them out, we've made our community less safe. We've made their community less safe. We made it less safe for this individual. And now talking about this group of individuals that come out of prison, it's so fantastic the work that Nehemiah does, because on top of, we know if someone has housing and they have a job, just the chances increase. But we also know those individuals coming out, they have trauma. They have mental health issues. So now we have someone who's going into a job and there's a crisis, whatever that crisis may be. Who's there to help them through that? Who's there to say, okay, this is your next step? Nehemiah does a lot of that work and has those support networks, which are so critical. And we know this as individuals. When we talk about this in a room, we all know this, and yet somehow it doesn't necessarily translate to the criminal justice system. We're trying to get smarter, but we are so far behind. I mean, we talk at length about the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences that individuals we have. We know the individuals that are oftentimes going into prison, not all, but many of them. We know just what being in a prison cage does to someone, just that trauma alone. We release them out into a community, oftentimes without any support networks, or certainly not ones that are available to everyone. And then we say, but now you need to be successful. And then we wonder why people stumble, and then we're mad at them. We're mad. We gave, it comes back to, well, we gave you this chance. It's a system that we've, as you've all said many times, I've been in rooms with you many times, we've set the system up for failure, which means we set individuals up for failure, which means we've set our mothers and our fathers and our sisters and our brothers and our cousins and our neighbors up for failure.
Yeah. And one of the things too is the fact that, I mean, it's a business plan, right? So why would we, if it's bringing in income, why would we change it and it's working, right? But something to what Kelly was saying, just even maybe just even think about this in another way, is the fact that it's modern day slavery, right? So I'm saying, so once this person is released from prison, it's saying basically, all right, hey, well, you have your freedom, so you should be all right now. But yet, I'm not going to give you any of the tools to actually succeed, to actually build, to actually to know what life looks like. So if you have mental health challenges, aorta challenges, or don't necessarily even have a support team, where reentry does not start when a person comes out. It starts the day of incarceration. Until we actually change that, we're going to continue to keep filling our prisons. Things are going, and now we're changing the system where it's like, oh, okay, let's go ahead and let's close the prison, but now we're going to go ahead and put someone on a lifetime, put them on a lifetime GPS, or we'll close the prison and then also we expect them to pay money, so now they're still indebted to the prison system. So
people bracelets paying rent on those. It's like so for some, like my colleague Aaron, that's $350 every month. How much? $350. So think about this. So if it's $350, so the blessing is he has a job to be able to afford it. Think about the ones who don't. Right. And then and those fees, it's no like, hey, all right, well, if you don't have this you don't have the money, we'll go ahead, we'll forgive that. No. It goes on my credit. So what does that also affect? Ankle bracelets go on your credit? Yeah, it can go on your credit if you owe fees to the state. And that's unless they extend your supervision. So it's a system. It's a business plan. I'm sorry.
And it's those continued obstacles that we set up. It's the collateral consequences, but it's those obstacles that we continually say, well, and again, we're not making these big, large, looking from beginning to end. We make tiny little pieces. And then when you put them all together, they don't make sense. It's exactly what Anthony was talking about. The monetary liability that individuals have, the fact that you can't have jobs in certain places, we talk, and it's not a funny haha, but in Wisconsin, if you're convicted of any misdemeanor, you can't drive a hayride, like a hay or a sleigh ride. Okay, I mean, there aren't a lot of people running around driving hay rides unless you're up in farming communities, or sleigh rides. But the fact of the matter is, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
I never knew that. Yeah.
But we have so many of those. That's the problem. I mean, we keep people out of opportunity that don't make any sense when we look back. We're angry, and we do so much of our policy making when we're angry at people. We're really mad at you, so therefore we're not only going to convict you of this and have you with these, this punishment, we're going to make sure 30 years down the road you still can't do this. When any of us look 30 years down the road, that doesn't make sense. I mean, we can look at those individuals. What I love most about the pardon, of course, I love the most that Anthony got a pardon, but it's those stories. It's what we've talked about at our community meetings, and the media focuses so much on the front end. I mean, we see all of the horrific things that are going on in our community. We see the people in chains, walking through a courtroom, the people, what they're charged with. We don't always hear about the other end of it. But what we never hear about is these success stories about how this person who was convicted of welfare fraud because they were trying to take care of four children are now 40 years later getting a pardon because they would like to work in childcare to help their, grandchildren. I mean, just those stories that, those are the stories that we need to highlight. Those should be on every billboard in Wisconsin, because that's what people need to recognize, and realize what happens to so many of our individuals that enter our criminal justice system. And you both know, because we've talked about it at length, is once you're in the criminal justice system, it is so, so, so difficult to get out of. The fact that Anthony has done so marvelously well and then given back to the community with Dr. G, thousands of people, is so wonderful, but that doesn't happen like it should. That doesn't, he should be, this is what should happen with everyone. And that just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
And a lot of people, a lot of men and women, they want to be able to contribute back into society in a different way. But because when you have that hanging over your head, I mean, again, I would have settled for if I need to pick up dump for the rest of my life in order to make sure I'm supporting my family, as long as I'm getting paid enough, that was my mindset. I just want to be able to do something different to get me from this situation. And there's so many people that have that exact same mindset, but and now it's kind of like, all right, hey, like, what do we do, right? What do we do? How do I do something different? And then also now we didn't even really jump into the whole thing of just really being able to navigate and being able to talk to my boss, because many people, when they're in a job, especially when you have a background, they're afraid, because even though to you this job may not mean too much, but to me this may be changing my life, right?
Sure.
So those are
It's scary. Oh man, I'm gonna jump us to the good part of this story, the good news of the story, because that stuff is real. And I love, Coop, that you have not forgotten it. I love that you're pardoned, so you can get professional licenses, you can run for public office. But I'm glad that you're still pointing out the systems and not just saying the systemic issues, and not just saying I got out, get yours. And so I just want to read part of this. I'm looking at the executive department in this, and I'm looking at a photo, a picture of your letter of pardon. It starts off by saying, whereas Anthony B. Cooper, but it reads all your convictions down here. And this goes back to 99. I mean, it spells it out, and it tells how long you've been sentenced, to 10 years on probation, 1 year in prison, and 4 years in prison, respectfully. Then it goes on and talks about the fact that you won the City of Madison's Humanitarian Award, the MLK Humanitarian Award, but that you're pardoned in 2021. And so, man, it's like 20 years before it's since you came in to have this pardon. Now, I was looking at some of first of all, man, congratulations again. I just need to let you know I feel something, when I see that. But I'm looking at the response at what it takes to actually fill out the pardon application. I went to the website. That thing is daunting, man. I've applied to graduate school and it didn't look that difficult. I've applied for housing loans. I've done 3 applications. That thing in itself looked like you needed a lawyer to do it. So it says all of these things you got to do. So it's got to be first reviewed for eligibility. And then it says it may take several months or even a year for your application to be reviewed. Then once your application is reviewed and complete, then you're going to be scheduled for a hearing, but that could take months or years, plural, before you get before the board. But then there's other things you got to do to even qualify. You have to have been convicted of a felon, to have completed your sentence at least 5 years ago, having not been convicted of another crime since you completed your sentence, and not currently be required to register as a sex offender. So the window of time is 5 years, Coop, but you waited 20 to do this. Why now?
I mean, there's a couple of things. One, I never thought I would be able to get it. And then also
Never thought you'd be able to get pardoned?
I think, so, and this may sound weird. I think a big part of it, even though I've, doing the work I've done in the community and things of that nature, but before, I was also a person that would just sit back in the weeds, right? So you think about, before I came to Nehemiah, I worked as a recruiter. Before that, I also worked in nursing. Before that, I own my own business, right? Before that, I worked in, for someone else doing job development before I created my own business. So it was this path of, all right, well, in some sense, I stayed out of trouble, but then 2, I felt like I always had to this may sound kind of weird. There's a book, it's called The Spook That Stood by the Door, right? Which is, you can get into that, but like, I kind of felt like I had to be the person that stood by the door, but yet had to do what I had to do for work, right? I had to make sure that, try not to draw too much attention to myself, because in some sense, in some of the companies I worked for, I felt like I was somewhat in hiding, right? When I was a recruiter, I felt like I was in hiding. I couldn't really be myself. I couldn't really, I had to navigate this institution, the way how things fit there. Because if I didn't, if someone looks me up, and because they didn't ask about my my background, but someone looked me up because of all the different discussions that I'm hearing about people with backgrounds as a recruiter. But of course, I have a familiar name. If they would have looked me up 9 times out of 10, they was like, wait a minute, this is the same guy.
But what made you get over that fear to actually go for it? So you've applied. You told me.
I think as just going forward and asking questions. I'll ask questions to Kelly. I've asked questions to you. I've asked questions to other people just in the community, and also having a governor who was willing at least to be able to look at it, right?
One of the first things you said when Walker got out of office and Evers got in, you said to me, I'm gonna go to this governor and ask him to pardon me. I remember you saying that when Walker left after the election. It's something you said to me.
Yeah, because we from all the, trying not to get political, right? But from some of the racially charged stuff that was going on with, I just say it like it is. So some of the racially charged stuff that was going on with Walker and things that, and knowing that he didn't care about pardons and didn't think about, even though he was on his own stuff. I'm trying to use nice words, but I think that wasn't his focus, right? That wasn't his focus, and he made it known that it wasn't his focus. So I accepted that, but in accepting that wasn't going to allow me to stop doing what I was doing for the community and keep going forward.
You did. You never slowed down. Kelly, I'm curious. Any rough estimate of how many states in the union, how many lack pardon board? And so I don't know how rare Wisconsin wasn't getting rid of it, and it's something that we can just look up. But I was just curious if you know off the top of your head whether or not it was a rarity to not have a pardon board for that period of dormancy. And again,
right. I think I'm assuming that all states have the ability to have it. That is kind of within that sole authority of the governor. It's whether the governor decides to utilize it or not.
And that's with each customer, with each
right.
With each
so that would be my assumption that it's
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And as you saw in the thing, the governor can put his own parameters and his own limitations. So Governor Evers, for instance, I think it's his only I'm not sure if he has any restrictions other than sex offenses, but that's a restriction, and we said the word political here a few times. Politically, I understand that. I mean, that tends to get into a different area for people. I, on the other hand, wish that would be included, because I think the just heartfelt testimony I've heard of individuals who have been in relationships where they were the, older teenage boy with the younger teenage girl, and now they're convicted sex offenders. And they've married these people and they can't go to any of their children's athletic events. They can't go into their children's schools for teacher conferences, parent-teacher conferences.
They want to church it without clearance.
Right, exactly. Those, we tend to, group people. We like to just kind of group people, recognize, and that to me is, and so my hope at some point in time that it will be expanded into individuals who have been convicted of sex offenses, because again, it's as Anthony's told, it's a very individualized. I mean, it's a lot of work, a lot of hurdles, and then it's the process. I mean, the board takes these very seriously. I think they spend a lot of time reviewing all of the information, and just to provide that, even that opportunity. I think that's what Anthony talked about. Whether you get it or not, it's still having that opportunity is really, it means something to people.
Anthony, how long ago did you start the process? Like how long ago did you fill out the application?
About a year. About a year ago. Yeah. Just about a year. I think there was something that was on the paperwork that I had to resend. And it was something that you had mentioned. And actually it was myself and my assistant. We went through the paperwork and filled it out ourselves and kind of went from there. I mean, yeah.
How long did it take to get the hearing after you applied?
I want to say probably 6 or 7 months. Yeah, 6 or 7 months.
Pins and needles, man. And so how long was your interview once you got in front of the board?
The interview actually, that wasn't that long. Once we went in front of the board, of course, they review your application. You go in front of, once you go in front of the board, they let you know when the hearing is. I said probably maybe 10 minutes, maybe 10, 20 minutes.
Well, your whole life is depending on your application, but like a 10-minute presentation and on Zoom.
Right, but and it really depends on how long, if they have like more questions and things of that nature. Like some of the questions, they had personal questions about me, like what am I doing with my life and things of that nature. It's just other additional stuff that they may have wanted to ask that didn't come out clear on the application. And it went from there. It was I feel like it was pretty much 10, 20 minutes. And honestly, it felt like an hour to me, but to be honest, but I don't think it was no more than 10, 20 minutes before it goes to, because it still goes to the next step after the pardon board, and it still has to go to Governor Evers. And to my understanding, he looks over it as well to say, okay, I think this makes sense.
That's just some perseverance, brother. What do you want to do now differently, now that you have a pardon? That
way to put me on the spot. I don't.
Well, let me ask you this. Is that okay? I can ask, what can you do now?
You can ask me anything. So I think the thing is, one, have I ever thought? I've thought about if there was anything in office that I can probably maybe run for one day. Or be able to.
That's completely off with the felon. That's
right.
You
right.
cannot.
I can do that now. At some point, I'm thinking about that. I don't know what stage in my life, but of course, but I do. I've seriously have really thought about that and what that would look like. Even if it's just the whole thing of being able to set the path, right, and being able to allow people. I think again, it was a purpose of our introduction. It's a purpose of being able to walk this process, even the purpose of, meeting Kelli and having a better understanding. We've had real offline conversations just about life and things of that nature. Funny to see, actually we end up staying in the same neighborhood, walk past each other, like being in community. I think those are again, one of those things that to show other people that their life has purpose also.
So public is one of those things. What's another one?
I've actually thought about going hunting, right? And I haven't told many people that, but yes, I've actually thought about going hunting. I've never done that, never had a desire to do so, until now, and just to have my basic liberties, right? And honestly, I think if I would have had this many years ago, I'm above age now, but I think I probably would have went to the military.
That's something else. With the felon, you cannot go to the
Right.
military.
That's right. Yep.
Can you get student loans, or can you get financial aid if you have a
there were some other contingencies because of I went through a program where I was in prison. They allowed me to get some student loans, but not all. So yeah, which was kind of weird, but I should say weird.
It depends on the conviction.
Yeah,
So certain ones, but you're left out of many of those. Mhm.
Yeah.
And you can vote. You don't need a partner to vote. You just need to be
off of probation.
You need to be off probation in order to vote. And Anthony, because and you're helping people, you and Kelly, because folks don't know this. And so, cool, people don't know that you're holding your breath. People, because we see you're affable, you're out walking, you manage, this focused interruption coalition team in the city of Madison to respond to violence, to negate or to mitigate retaliation. You're showing up on stuff. I was in China a couple of years ago with my family. I just happened to turn on my phone. I see you on the front page of the news standing next to the mayor. They're making some stuff fun. I'm in Hong Kong and I'm looking at you on my phone. There's so many things that you're doing, but folks don't know that you were walking around in this private hell. I officiated your wedding, your marriage. How many years ago now? 11?
14. Well, yeah, 14. It'll be 15 this year. Yeah.
You met, Alicia, and just has been a power of just a beautiful life partner. So I just see you at your best. I see you shining. I see you, one day, when my mom was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. That's not funny. But the funny part was somebody saw my mom with a shady character at Easttown. And they called Jackie and said, "We just saw your husband's mama with some guy with some dreads and a dress and some other kind of stuff." It wasn't a dress, but the way they described it. And I couldn't get there fast enough. I was like, "Coop, I know you're on the east side. Some man is in my mama's car." And Coop, I just saw another side of you, Coop. Right. The side of you I saw when you showed up with different family. Footwear. Different footwear. Like you had dress shoes like you always wear, but you had gym shoes in the trunk. Right. So that you could have traction. Had I known that side of you, I would have never said anything about cutting you on that afternoon I saw you at Miss Lopez's house. Had I been able to fast forward to see the way you were gearing down to make sure that my mother was okay, I would have said, "How you doing, sir? Can I buy you lunch? Hey, I got my lunch money. I know you typically get people's lunch money. I figured I'd offer it to you before you come and take it for me." And I was like, "Coop, what you got gym shoes for?" You said, I didn't know what that looked like. I don't want to be having slippery shoes on.
Dr. G, I was gonna say, I don't think you should take back your statement about wanting to cut him. I think he was afraid enough to come to church and to keep coming back to church.
Right, you're right, you're right. Okay, I keep that. But it was just funny seeing that side of you that's doing this. Anthony, I'm so proud of you. Kelly, why aren't we seeing this in more states? Or are we seeing lots of pardons in other states? Again, you're our state public defender, so I'm not sure how much you talk to your counterparts in, say, Minnesota or Michigan or Illinois, but you look at Anthony. His dad, he's a dad, he's a husband. Both of his sons are serving this country. Both of his sons are serving, and he is Anthony, you're exceptional, but you are not an exception to the rule. By that, I mean, there are other fathers just as committed to their children. You made a commitment. I'm not going to stay in this prison because my babies are not going to come here and see me and think this is home. You made the change, and people, even down to your agent, people helped you. So it just makes me wonder. We know that we have extreme cases where people get out and they do wrong and they do crazy stuff, but the majority of the people don't. And the bulk of people in prisons are coming home. This is not a life sentence for everyone. People are not on death row. The majority of incarcerated people, the 22,000, 20,000 in Wisconsin, the majority at some point are coming home. If we don't begin to think of ways of helping people to come home right, we are making them ravenous. We are putting up unnecessary barriers, and we are turning people who might have done criminal activity into criminals. There's a difference. There's a difference to someone who's they're in a hard place, and so they're doing some crime. I think we're training people to become criminals. And so, Kelly, am I just being too Pollyanna? Do states need to look more seriously at paroling folks like Coop who are very worthy of it and have proved it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, as you said, 95+% of our prison population, the individuals in prison are coming back. They're coming back to their communities. So, and we need to be ready to help them and to support them. But I think we have to start, pardons are so critical. And what we've heard today, I mean, Anthony's story is so wonderful. I hope so many people have an opportunity to listen to it, but we need to start on the front end too. We need to start trying to keep people out of the jails and out of the prisons. And if they end up with getting involved in the system, expungement, we need to be expanding expungement so that people who make this mistake, this, what you said, take part in criminal activity, we don't turn them into criminals. People who are headed to prison that we know are going to end up in prison, because we're angry at them, we keep extending and lengthening these sentences. People do not need to be in prison 20 and 30 and 40 years. I mean, we've taken away all opportunity and all we're turning individuals into, they're survivalists. We want them to join the community and if we're able to support them, to be members of that community, to succeed in any way that they can, whether it's through a job and supporting their family and being with their parents and being with their children. But we tend to do things from the beginning to the end and it's again, back to those collateral consequences, setting up those barriers. So I think pardons are extraordinarily important. I think the human side of these, I think is, again, wonderful for Anthony. I think these need to be really highlighted because I think it reminds people of who gets involved in our criminal justice system and who's oftentimes these people really what happens to them. But we also have to start on that front end. And I think we really, it's where criminal justice reform, it needs to happen at so many, in Wisconsin, we can start anywhere. That's the nice thing. Other states are doing a lot of criminal justice reform. We can start anywhere and have success anywhere because it has to start we can do it in the beginning, middle, end. So I think, we have opportunity. It's just, I hope we're strong enough to take that opportunity.
But something I just did want to just add in there too, and I think especially for the listeners, I think to encourage them, just like yourself, because you didn't know anything about me. I'm not saying that to walk up to someone and threaten them, saying that you don't cut them, but what I am saying is that the fact of being able to show people that they're human, that who have been incarcerated, that being able to allow yourself, if you are an employer, to give people, and I even hate to say give, I like to say earn, right? But because let a person to earn their way to the top, or to earn trust, to earn their ability to show you, to say, hey, I want this job. I want to do something different in my life. Yes, that was in my past, but I want this opportunity to be a part of my future. It would have been easy for me to go back to doing what I was doing from day one for me, getting out of prison. The fact that I continue to go forward and say, okay, I didn't want that to be my future, or for that to be something continuous for my sons to be able to see. I didn't want to normalize that for them. So those are the things that, to know that, one, when you have someone like Alex G, who took the opportunity, even though, I worked and worked my way up. And so he saw some other things as he got a chance to know me. But I think that once he saw that, it was like, okay, there's something else, there's something different. There's something different about him that I feel as though, and he had to trust me. He had to trust me.
I feel like it had been co-opted. I saw your leadership skills. That's my passion. That's what I study. I saw it loud and clear. I see so many Black brothers and sisters, a lot of Black brothers, because working with young men who've not had their fathers in their lives, that's a passion of mine. I saw that you had bona fide leadership skills. And if you had the space to use them in a way that was productive, I knew not only that you could, you would. And now we're playing it out, and I was right.
Yeah. 8 years later.
8 years. Dr. G, I think one of the things that, and you have been doing this with a lot of your community groups, that we can't lose sight of, it's important for the three of us to have these conversations, but the bigger, broader table is having individuals from the business community, having individuals that we tend to silo areas out. The criminal justice system is over here, this is over here, and we all are one. We all go back to our communities and we're one. And when individuals, whether it's in law enforcement, whether it's the business community, whatever, policymakers sitting around those table and really talking and hearing from individuals that have been through the system in a variety of different ways. It's a different discussion, and people are more likely, not only as we talked about humanizing it, taking that risk, saying, of course, these are individuals that I want working with me. I want working in my company, because these are good, strong, leaders, and they're tough. I mean, they've been through a lot, and they are tough individuals. And I think we're going to have the biggest impact when we start to get individuals that are not necessarily in those usual professions at the table, and those conversations continue.
Kelli, we just issued an invitation to, I won't say her first name, but you recommended her, but she works for a major community partner, American Family Insurance, but they're coming on because we need businesses to be on that team with us, so that it's not just siloed with the social service providers and governmental agencies. We need business at the table too, to help us to communicate the opportunity to hire folks who are putting their lives back together. So I totally agree with what it is you're saying.
And this, it's not a one-way street. I mean, they want Anthony as a customer. They want Anthony to buy insurance. I mean, our business community needs they don't, exactly. From the workforce perspective, and they need them as their clients and their customers. I mean, this is a two-way street.
Clients, customers, and employees. Exactly. Because in Wisconsin, with such low unemployment, we're afraid that there's just certain contracts we can't maintain if we don't have it. So this is a win-win-win. And you're right, we need to highlight this. Anthony, I'm going to give you the last word, because I'm loving this conversation, but I don't want to go on too long. But what would you say to someone who's listening, who has a son, grandson, dad, uncle, friend, who's been thinking about doing the pardon process application, but like you, they've waited 20 years because they're not sure if they deserve it. They're not sure if the governor's open to it. What's your word to people who are thinking about the pardon process? Has it been worth the wait?
Yes, definitely. What I was saying, I'll make it really short and plain. Go for it. What do you have to lose? You have, this is your life. It's up to you to change it. And at least being able to allow yourself to have the opportunity to know which way it may go, and be okay with that, whether if you get it or not. And we know rejection can sometimes be hard, but it'll be all right. At least you know where you stand, and continue to live your life the best way that you can.
That's powerful. I'm going to put a link in the show notes so that you can find out the wonderful things that Anthony Cooper is doing. We have an annual Reentry conference that's coming up this fall. The link to the podcast that he leads. There's also Lunch and Learns, where people can actually dial in on Zoom and listen to people who are formerly incarcerated talk about their experiences. I always say allies have got to educate and donate and affiliate, lead in to understand what's going on. These are folks who are needed in our community. When I was working on my dissertation and I was writing about fatherlessness, I just happened to, haphazardly ask Jerome Dillard, does mass incarceration have anything to do at home with fatherlessness in the Black community? And here I am becoming an expert in the subject matter, writing about it, and never once talked about the loss of fathers and sons and husbands from our community. So that really began to open my eyes. And it also awakened me to the fact that my father was in and out of prison and jail as a kid, and I had totally just conveniently blocked that out, that some of my fatherlessness is due to his struggle with the law. And as I've gotten older and less angry, I realized that my father was a sharecropper, that he was a legalized slave. Until he was 16 or 17, he worked picking cotton for a living, and the pressure of that and societal abuse and other kinds of abuse. And so there's just a lot that's going on. And this is having a huge impact on our community, particularly. So Anthony, you as a Black man, as a Black person of color being pardoned, is such a good example. And I hope that it does not become old to you. I hope that you tell it. I hope that you make it a part of your process, because people need to have their minds changed, that they're walking around with someone who we think's free, but they're not. So folks, I want to thank you all for listening in to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. My special guests have been Anthony Cooper Sr., who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Reentry Services at the Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership. He's part of my cabinet, and Kelli Thompson, who is a public defender for the state of Wisconsin, a role she's held since 2011. 11. And each week I stress to you listeners to lean in, to listen, to learn, to be changed, to share this information. And hey, while you're at it, click that Patreon button so that you can find out how you can support our work and subscribe so that you never miss an exciting episode. Thank you all for listening. We do this because we believe that these conversations are key to changing mindsets, and changed mindsets and have an impact on society and rules and laws. And so be a part of the change that we all long to see and experience. All right. Thanks so much for being a part of the Black Like Me family. I appreciate you.
Black like me. Black like.
This has been another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Special shout out to Eli and to Jeremy, who are my engineers and my editors on this, to Don Thornton, who is my podcast manager, who makes sure that we line all of this up, to Corey Saffold, who is responsible for that exciting new jingle, that Black Like Me jingle. I'm so excited about that. And to vocals by Marcus Fleming.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.
Black like me.